In the small town of Cedar Creek, tucked away at the end of Oak Lane, stood the old Harper residence. Built in the 1920s, the house had seen better days but retained a stately charm with its wide, wraparound porch and intricate woodwork. By the early 2000s, it had fallen into disrepair, and when the Harrison family bought it, they saw an opportunity to restore its former glory. Daniel and Rachel Harrison, along with their 2 young children, Lily and Ben, moved into the Harper residence in the summer of 2002. The house, though in need of significant renovations, was spacious and perfect for their growing family. They spent weeks painting, fixing, and cleaning, excited about their new beginning. It wasn't long before unsettling occurrences began. At first, it was small things. Creaking floorboards when no one was walking, cold spots that seemed to appear out of nowhere, and the occasional flicker of lights. Daniel, a practical man, chalked it up to the house's age and settling. Rachel, however, couldn't shake an uneasy feeling, especially at night. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Rachel was downstairs in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. She heard soft, shuffling footsteps coming from the second floor. She assumed it was the kids getting up, but when she went to check, the hallway was empty and silent. The children were fast asleep. As the weeks went by, the disturbances grew more intense. Doors would slam shut on their own, and the temperature in certain rooms would plummet unexpectedly. Daniel and Rachel began to argue more frequently, the stress of the renovations and the strange happenings taking their toll. One night, after another unsettling episode, Rachel decided to investigate the attic, hoping to find some clue about the cause of the disturbances. The attic was a dark, cluttered space filled with old trunks and dusty furniture. As she moved among the piles, she found an old, leather-bound journal hidden beneath a tattered blanket. The journal belonged to Evelyn Harper, the last resident of the house before the Harrisons. Evelyn's entries detailed her life in the house, but as Rachel read on, the tone shifted. The final pages were filled with frantic scribbles and disjointed sentences about shadows that moved on their own and voices whispering through the walls. Evelyn wrote of a growing sense of dread and a feeling of being watched, and her final entry ended with the words, "They are here. I can't leave." Rachel was disturbed by the journal but shared her findings with Daniel. They decided to dig deeper into the house's history and learned that Evelyn Harper had lived a troubled life. She had been the wife of a wealthy man who had been abusive, and Evelyn had struggled with mental health issues. Her death had been ruled a suicide, but rumors swirled that she had been driven to it by her husband's cruelty. Determined to understand what was happening, the Harrisons sought the help of a local historian and a paranormal investigator. The historian confirmed the grim details of Evelyn's life, while the paranormal investigator, Mark Sullivan, conducted a thorough examination of the house. Mark set up his equipment and spent hours recording and monitoring the house. He discovered that the disturbances seemed to center around a particular room, Evelyn's old bedroom. During his investigation, Mark captured eerie, disembodied voices on his recordings, along with unexplained cold spots and objects moving on their own. The investigator performed a cleansing ritual, trying to release the trapped energy that seemed to be haunting the house. He focused on Evelyn, urging her spirit to find peace and move on from her torment. The ritual seemed to calm the house, but Mark warned the Harrisons that spirits tied to such strong emotions might take time to fully leave. Over the following months, the disturbances in the house diminished, though the occasional creak of floorboards and sudden chill in the air reminded them of the house's past. The Harrisons found solace in knowing they had helped Evelyn's spirit find some measure of peace. They continued to live in the Harper residence, maintaining its charm and honoring its history, all the while sharing the tale of the shadows that once lingered in Cedar Creek. If you visit the Harper residence on a quiet night, some say you might still feel a chill in the air or hear a soft whisper carried by the wind, a reminder of the past and the shadows that once walked the halls of Oak Lane. As the months turned into years, the Harrisons settled into their life at the Harper residence. They became accustomed to the occasional eerie occurrence, chalking it up to the house's age rather than lingering spirits. Life seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy. However, one crisp autumn evening, just as the leaves began to turn golden and fall, strange things started happening again. Daniel and Rachel were away at a town meeting, leaving Lily and Ben alone at home. They had just finished dinner and were getting ready for bed when Lily, the older of the two, noticed something unusual. In the middle of the night, Lily was awakened by a soft, insistent knocking on her bedroom door. She had a habit of leaving her door slightly ajar, so the knocking was loud and clear. She opened the door, expecting to see her brother or a family member, but the hallway was empty and dark. As she stepped out to check, she saw a fleeting shadow dart around the corner. Terrified, Lily ran back to her bed and pulled the covers over her head. The knocking continued, this time coming from the attic. She tried to ignore it, but the sounds grew louder, more frantic. When her parents finally returned home, they found her in tears, but she struggled to explain what had happened. The next day, Daniel decided to investigate. He went up to the attic, checking every corner, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The old trunks and dusty furniture were exactly as they had been. He dismissed it as a figment of Lily's imagination, perhaps influenced by the house's history. But that night, Rachel experienced something even more unsettling. She was alone in the kitchen when she heard a faint, mournful melody coming from the living room. It was a hauntingly beautiful tune, like an old-fashioned music box. The melody was eerily familiar, but she couldn't place it. As she approached the sound, it abruptly stopped, leaving her in heavy silence. Rachel searched the living room and found nothing. The old record player, which had been silent for years, was still. There were no visible signs of disturbance. She tried to brush it off, but a lingering unease settled over her. Over the next few weeks, the Harrisons noticed a growing sense of discomfort in the house. The children seemed more fearful and withdrawn, and Rachel had frequent nightmares about shadowy figures. Daniel, feeling the weight of the house's history more acutely, decided to contact Mark Sullivan again, hoping that the paranormal investigator might shed some light on the new disturbances. Mark agreed to return and conducted a more thorough investigation. This time, he employed advanced equipment, including thermal cameras and electromagnetic field detectors. As he set up his gear, he noticed that the energy readings in the house were unusually high, particularly around the attic and Evelyn's old bedroom. During his investigation, Mark made a chilling discovery. The thermal cameras captured what appeared to be a shadowy figure moving through the walls. It was as if the entity was trying to communicate or perhaps even seeking something. The electromagnetic field detectors fluctuated wildly in certain areas, suggesting the presence of a powerful, restless spirit. Mark also conducted another séance, hoping to establish contact with Evelyn's spirit once more. During the session, the medium's voice took on a sorrowful tone, and a new message seemed to emerge from the spirit world. "Help me find him." The message was cryptic and unsettling. Mark and the Harrisons were puzzled. Who was him? Evelyn's fiancé had vanished long ago, but there were no clear answers. Determined to uncover the truth, Mark dug deeper into the house's history. He discovered that Evelyn's fiancé had indeed disappeared under mysterious circumstances, but there were rumors of a hidden room in the house, a place where dark secrets might have been kept. The historian had once mentioned an old servant's quarters that had been bricked up during renovations many years ago. Mark and Daniel decided to investigate this area, hoping it might provide some answers. After careful searching, they found the bricked-up door behind a false wall in the basement. With some effort, they managed to break through the bricks. Inside, they found a small, grim room with faded wallpaper and old furniture covered in dust. At the center of the room was a large, ornate chest. The chest was locked, but after some effort, they managed to open it. Inside were more old letters, photographs, and a diary belonging to Evelyn's fiancé. The documents revealed a dark and twisted history. Evelyn's fiancé had been involved in illicit activities and had been hiding secrets from Evelyn. The letters detailed his guilt over his actions and his fear of retribution. The diary hinted at a hidden stash of money and a planned escape, but it ended abruptly, suggesting he had never left. Mark and the Harrisons realized that Evelyn's spirit was still trapped, not only by her own tragic fate, but also by the unresolved mystery of her fiancé. The discovery of the chest and the truth behind it seemed to hold the key to resolving the haunting once and for all. As they continued to piece together the puzzle, the house seemed to grow quieter, and the shadows less threatening. Yet, Evelyn's presence remained a haunting reminder of the past. The Harrisons knew that they had uncovered only part of the story, and that the resolution might require more than just uncovering the truth. They hoped that, in time, both Evelyn and her troubled fiancé could find the peace they had been searching for. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. With the discovery of the chest and its contents, the Harrisons felt they were on the brink of unraveling the full mystery surrounding the Harper residence. Mark Sullivan, determined to bring closure, worked closely with the Harrisons to understand and resolve the lingering spirit's unrest. One chilly evening, while the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the house, Mark and Daniel decided to explore a new lead. They had come across an old map of the estate that hinted at hidden passages beneath the house. The map was a faded, hand-drawn sketch showing what appeared to be an underground network of tunnels or storage areas. Using the map as a guide, they began their search in the basement. The Harrisons had never noticed any signs of these hidden areas, but as they examined the floor more closely, they discovered a small, almost imperceptible trapdoor beneath a dusty rug. With some effort, they pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Armed with flashlights and a sense of apprehension, Daniel and Mark descended the stairs. The air grew colder and more oppressive with each step. The tunnel was damp and musty, and the walls were lined with old bricks, some of which appeared to have been hastily repaired. As they ventured deeper, they noticed faint scratch marks on the walls and the occasional discarded object. A broken lamp, a rusty candlestick, seemingly out of place. The atmosphere became increasingly heavy, and the sense of being watched grew more pronounced. They finally reached a larger chamber, dimly illuminated by their flashlights. In the center of the chamber was an old wooden door, slightly ajar. Mark pushed it open, revealing a room lined with shelves filled with dusty bottles, jars, and old books. At the far end of the room was an antique desk with a large, ornate mirror. The mirror's glass was streaked and dirty, but a peculiar feeling washed over them as they approached. On the desk, amidst a clutter of old papers, was another journal. This one, however, belonged to Evelyn's fiancé, Henry Whitmore. The journal was filled with frantic entries, detailing his guilt and paranoia. He spoke of hiding from enemies and being consumed by fear. It became clear that Henry had been involved in a web of deceit and criminal activity, and his disappearance was likely the result of his own betrayal and actions. As they read through Henry's journal, Mark and Daniel uncovered a disturbing revelation. Henry had been involved in occult practices, attempting to summon entities for personal gain. The last entries were particularly chilling, mentioning a ritual intended to bind a spirit to the house, hoping it would serve his will. The room's atmosphere grew colder still, and the air seemed to thicken. Suddenly, Mark's equipment picked up an intense electromagnetic field fluctuation. The temperature dropped dramatically, and the shadowy figure from the thermal cameras began to appear again, more defined and agitated. The apparition seemed to be the restless spirit of Henry, and it was not alone. Shadows swirled around the room, and an unsettling feeling of dread settled over them. Mark, recognizing the danger, performed a protective ritual to shield them from the malevolent force. The ritual was intense, requiring concentration and the use of sacred objects. Daniel, meanwhile, sifted through the remaining papers and found a letter from Evelyn, written in a desperate plea for help. The letter described her growing terror as she discovered Henry's dark practices and her attempts to escape. It was clear now that Evelyn had been trapped not only by Henry's actions but also by his malevolent intentions. Mark's ritual seemed to weaken the spirit's hold, but it was evident that the house's energy was still turbulent. They needed to find a way to fully release both Evelyn and Henry from their torment. Determined to solve the mystery, Mark and the Harrisons continued their investigation, piecing together the last of the clues. They learned of a final hidden cache, a place where Henry had supposedly conducted his most dangerous rituals. They set out to find this last hiding spot, hoping it would provide the key to finally freeing the spirits. As they prepared for their final search, the house seemed to respond to their efforts. The disturbances became more pronounced, and the shadows grew darker, as if the spirits were aware that their release was imminent. The Harrisons, accompanied by Mark, ventured into the depths of the house, following the trail of clues. With each step, the house's eerie history seemed to come alive around them, and the oppressive presence of the spirits grew stronger. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. With the final clues in hand, Daniel, Rachel, and Mark ventured deeper into the hidden parts of the Harper residence. Their search led them to an old, forgotten cellar beneath the basement, a place so hidden that even the most thorough renovations hadn't uncovered it. The entrance to the cellar was concealed behind a wall of loose bricks. After carefully removing the bricks, they revealed a rusty iron door. Mark used a crowbar to pry it open, revealing a narrow, descending staircase bathed in an unsettling silence. As they descended, the temperature plummeted and an overwhelming sense of dread enveloped them. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a dark, cavernous chamber, illuminated only by the flickering light of their flashlights. The chamber was lined with symbols etched into the stone walls, arcane symbols and drawings that hinted at dark rituals. In the center of the room was a large, circular altar made of stone. On the altar were several old, worn books and a brass urn covered in dust. Rachel's heart raced as she approached the altar, noticing that one of the books was open to a page describing a binding ritual. A ritual that aimed to trap a spirit within a specific location. The pieces fell into place. Henry Whitmore had used this chamber for his dark practices, and Evelyn's spirit had been bound here, unable to escape. Mark's equipment went haywire as they approached the urn. The electromagnetic field spiked, and the air grew thick with malevolent energy. Suddenly, a cold wind rushed through the chamber, and the temperature dropped even further. Shadows danced around them, forming into menacing shapes. A shadowy figure materialized before them. Henry Whitmore's spirit, twisted and tormented. His eyes glowed with a fiery rage, and his presence seemed to sap their strength. But Evelyn's spirit was also there, her figure appearing as a sorrowful wraith trapped in the shadows. Mark took a deep breath and began a counter-ritual, using the protective symbols and ancient prayers he had prepared. The ritual required precision and unwavering focus. As he chanted, the room was filled with a low, resonant hum, and the air vibrated with powerful energy. The spirit's reactions were violent. Henry's shadowy form writhed and thrashed, while Evelyn's spirit seemed to reach out, pleading for release. The walls of the chamber began to tremble, and the very ground beneath them seemed to shift. It was as if the house itself was resisting the ritual. Rachel, determined to help, joined Mark in reciting the ritualistic phrases, while Daniel, using a flashlight, highlighted the symbols on the walls. The combined effort seemed to have an effect. The shadows grew less defined, and the malevolent energy began to dissipate. In a climactic moment, Henry's spirit let out a guttural, anguished cry. The dark energy coalesced into a swirling vortex, and with a final, desperate effort, Mark completed the ritual. A blinding flash of light erupted from the altar, and the chamber was momentarily filled with a deafening roar. When the light subsided, the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The chamber was calm and still, the shadows having receded. The spirits of Evelyn and Henry were nowhere to be seen. The air felt lighter, and the cold draft had vanished. The Harrisons and Mark, exhausted but relieved, left the chamber. As they emerged from the cellar, they felt a profound sense of peace. The house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and the lingering disturbances ceased. The oppressive feeling that had haunted the Harper residence was gone. In the following weeks, the Harrisons noticed a significant change. The house felt different, brighter, warmer, and welcoming. The lingering sadness that had once pervaded the rooms was replaced by a calm and serene atmosphere. They continued their renovations, but now, the house seemed to embrace its new life. Mark Sullivan kept in touch, occasionally checking in on the Harrisons. He had sensed that the spirits were finally at peace and that the house's dark chapter had closed. The Harrisons, grateful for his help, continued to cherish the home and its history, sharing the story with those who appreciated its past. The Harper residence became a symbol of hope and redemption for Cedar Creek. The story of the shadows and the spirits that once haunted the house became a local legend, a reminder of the power of courage and determination in the face of darkness. And if you ever visit the Harper residence on a quiet evening, you might hear the faint echoes of a melody carried on the breeze, an old, forgotten tune that speaks of peace finally found and shadows laid to rest. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.